What's up, you guys? It's Simon. Welcome back to my channel. So I'm going to be honest here. There are a lot of things that I'm afraid of. Some things that don't really translate well into characters, like driving or mirrors or heights, and some are a little too self-explanatory, like clowns or zombies. But there are a few fears that I thought I'd like to try and conquer through some cute character type illustrations as a sort of like mock exposure therapy. So first up we have spiders. I know it's pretty irrational to be afraid of spiders. We've all heard that spiders are more afraid of us than we are of them because we're big giants as far as they're concerned. My main issue is not so much spiders themselves, but the fear of spiders crawling on me. You'd think that this is also a somewhat irrational fear. Like I said, spiders are afraid of us. They'd want to stay away, right? Wrong. More often than not, if I let a spider coexist in a room with me at some point, it will find a way to crawl on me. It freaks me out. I literally hate how it feels. It's the absolute worst thing to me. I remember there was one summer, I was pretty young, I want to say maybe 12 or 13. I was minding my own business laying in bed, and a spider literally crawled through my headboard, and I didn't notice until it was crawling up my arm. So that was terrifying. A more recent occurrence, I would say, would be sometime around last year. My mom had this wolf spider that she let chill around the house because, of course, they eat pests like flies and those little bugs that like to chill near our plants, which we have an abundance of. So I figured that it was fine to let him hang around until one day I saw him suspiciously close to my brother's room. And I say this because me and my brother's rooms are directly across from each other. Like, I'm talking not even a foot's difference between our two doorways. It's a very tiny hallway. We're very close together. So I was like, hey, and I'm talking to the spider, not my brother. I was pointing at the spider. I said, you and me are cool unless you come in my room. If you come in my room, as long as you don't touch me, we're cool. Just don't touch me and we don't have a problem. And what did he decide to do with that warning? Crawl up my leg. Crawl up my leg is what he decided to do. I literally wanted to peel my skin off. Like, that is how bad, like, the feeling of spiders crawling on me is. It literally freaks me out to the point where I want to peel my skin off. I don't know any other way to describe the overall feeling that I have. So yeah, in general, I would give those experiences a solid 2 out of 10 and would much prefer sticking them in a cup and yeeting them back outside. So on with the character design then. I knew, of course, that spiders are highly associated with sort of dark, edgy, alternative fashion, so I didn't want to stray far from that with this illustration. I also didn't really choose any sort of genre of like edgy alt because like there's a lot of different ones these days, and I just kind of wanted to go with stuff that looked cute in my opinion. So I gave her like this really cute kind of like spiky short mullet type of thing. I'm not really sure how to describe this hairstyle or if it really even technically counts as a mullet, but I do really like how it looks. I also wanted to give her a long sleeve like sheer net top as well with a little spider choker because like, come on, she's a spider. I kind of have to. I had also originally intended to give her 8 eyes, which she did have in the sketch, but when it came to doing the line art, it just wasn't looking very good. So instead, I settled on 4, and I gave her 2 additional eyes in the form of those little dots underneath, which I technically only is 6, but we'll pretend that it is 8 for my sake. And then for colors, I really wanted like a reddish purple vampy look. I was really getting Draculaura vibes from her, even though Homegirl is a spider and not a vampire. I just couldn't get the idea of her having like bright pink skin and dark reddish purple hair out of my head. I am a little disappointed with the hair though because it wasn't quite the color scheme I had in mind. It's definitely leaning a lot more red when I was more so looking for like a dark purplish wine color with like some red highlights. I don't know. I had this image in my head and it did not come out that way. I feel like I've spent half of my artistic career looking for a really good dark wine red marker, and I have yet to find it. So if you guys have any recommendations, I would love to hear it. Regardless, here is our spider girl. I think she looks pretty cute. I am definitely still afraid of spiders though. So, on to our next fear to try and conquer. If you haven't already guessed, it's the fear of the dark. I know, Simon, you're 22. Why are you still afraid of the dark? And here's the thing. I'm not afraid of the dark itself, more so what is in the dark. And this fear stems from my middle school days when I, for some reason, had some pretty severe sleep paralysis on a somewhat regular basis. I never had like a sleep paralysis demon, so to speak. A lot of people who undergo sleep paralysis will mention seeing some form of figure either on them or near them or around them, somewhere in the room even. For me, it was more like I sort of just like felt a presence, and it only ever really happened if I woke up and the TV was off, so I was in total darkness. I couldn't see things around me or make out any shapes. And the worst thing was that I also couldn't move. I couldn't turn the light on or the TV in order to push back some of that darkness so that I could tell myself like, hey, there's nothing in your room. It's just bedtime. Instead, I would just lay under the covers, locked and frozen, only able to imagine what could be in my room, which are not the best conditions to get back to sleep under. That being said, for this character, because of the trope of sleep paralysis demons, I of course wanted to make a sort of darkness-inspired demon with lots of like grayscale and not much for color. For the skin though, I did go with a little bit of warmth in the gray and even a touch of red on the cheeks and lips because I still wanted to get the vibe that this was like a being that was alive. So I actually used a classic color combo that I used to use pretty frequently back when I was a Homestuck artist for Warm-Blooded Trolls, which are the E70s in Copic, the lightest E70s, so like E70, E71. I believe I did start straight out with E71 and then go to 74 and 79 for this because I did want it to be a little bit darker because E70 is pretty light. As for the red though, I did E04 because it's a pretty dang gray sort of pink. And it looks a lot warmer when put up against those grays. As for the clothing and hair, I decided to go for it, like the neutral grays. Initially, I'd wanted to do cool grays, but my cool grays are unfortunately dying as far as the darkest ones go. So I'm thinking about doing a video here soon, either as a main channel video or as part of the vlog, where I just go through my Copics, find which ones are either dying or damaged in some way, and revamp them, because for whatever reason, I've been finding markers with really chunky looking nibs. Like I'm talking like it looks like stuff is coming out of them. I don't know what it is. It's just I haven't changed my storage of my markers at all in these last few years, so I don't understand why all of a sudden I'm having problems with weird like growth on them. I don't know. It sounds gross. You'll see in the video if I do decide to make it. Anyways, I went with neutral grays and I kind of wish I'd made her hair a bit darker. It's been quite a bit since I've illustrated hair with Copics, and especially at such a teeny scale, so getting the blending right was definitely a bit of a struggle, and it was much lighter than I'd anticipated it to be. I do have to say though, I really like how the shirt turned out because it looks exactly how I'd imagined it. I wanted sort of like the neckline area to look as though it was swallowing the character up in kind of like an inky way, like Bendy and the Ink Machine, if that makes sense. And I just think that the effect looks really, really cool. So here is what our little darkness demon looks like. And our final fear, which I'm sure many of you also share. I know I said I didn't want to do too many like character-ish illustrations, like the same reason I didn't want to do the clown or the zombie, but this fear was just too good for me to pass up. And it is dolls. I'm like chaotically afraid of dolls, and not regular dolls. For example, I love watching doll customizing videos on YouTube. Like, I'm a big fan of like Hexian and Dollightful and people like that. I think they're like super satisfying, and there's so many incredibly creative and talented artists out there. What I am afraid of, however, is those freaky little porcelain dolls. I swear, they move on their own. It's like Toy Story up in there. Those things move, and you cannot convince me otherwise. I had this doll when I was younger. I want to say maybe 6 to 8 years old, that I not so lovingly referred to as Chucky. It was this little red-headed doll, and I can't remember what sort of outfit she had on. It might have been overalls, actually. Like, I think she genuinely did have like the rainbow sweater and little overalls, but she wasn't like intended to be a Chucky doll. Um, Anyways, she straight up looked like Chucky, and this doll was never in the same place in the house. Now, you might be thinking, like, oh, Simon, I'm sure someone in the house was just moving it to play tricks on you. But no, no, no. My dad has a place for everything. If he puts something in a place, it is always going to be in that spot. If you move it out of that spot, he will immediately put it back where he thinks it goes, even if it's your stuff. For example, in the bathroom right now, to this day, I'm constantly having to move this brush that I use to wash my face. It's like a little half sphere with bristles, and I have to set it out to dry before closing it so that it doesn't grow nasty stuff on it if I close it while it's wet. And if my dad finds it while it's out drying, he will close it and move it, and I know he does it because I'll find it with the bristles smashed on the sides because he doesn't understand how to close it. Essentially, like I said, if my dad has a place for something, that's where that something stays. So it would make zero sense for this to go from upstairs in our living room to in the basement underneath the stairs or in the laundry room. My little brother was afraid of it too, and he would have been around 2 to 4 at this time, so he definitely is not the one moving it, which leaves my mom as the only person who would feasibly have the want to move it around, except for the fact that she didn't want it moved. She didn't even like us playing with it because, again, it's made of porcelain. It's very fragile. We are young, clumsy children, so she didn't want it being moved around. And she definitely wouldn't want us to make it, or she wouldn't want us to think that it's moving around because, like, hello, that's more incentive to mess with it, and she obviously didn't want it to be broken. So there's no one in the house that would want it to move, and yet it was always in different spots throughout the week. I mean, it just it also just really had some bad vibes. I don't know how to explain it. Y'all probably know what I mean. Y'all probably have at least one object in your house where you're like, I'm not going near that thing. That thing freaks me out. It's got bad energy. Don't like that. So yeah, that's what that doll was for me. That's what all porcelain dolls are for me in general. So yeah, as for the design of this character, it was relatively easy to figure out what I wanted to do since porcelain dolls are more often than not already cute girls. They're just creepy, cute girls. So in order to drive home the fact that this is indeed a doll, I included a few key features, namely the dead eyes, as well as some cracks in her cheek, and then for the other side, I included some little little blue flowers. I am broken, in a similar sort of pattern to what you would see on a lot of porcelain dishes. It's also not really something that you see on dolls, but because it was blue and I'd already planned to give her a blue dress and bows, I thought it tied in pretty nicely with the overall design. I will say the coloring on this was a bit awkward because I used the wrong marker for her base tone, so her skin ended up being a pretty similar shade to her hair, because for the highlights on her hair, I did use the exact same color for the base of the skin because that's what I normally do with that hair color. However, I also usually use E11 for the base rather than E13, so there was just a little bit of I think like a battle for tone, if that makes sense. But yeah, I also made the mistake of adding blue to the flowers before going in with the shading on the face. So blending it was pretty rough because I obviously didn't want to smudge that blue all the way around her face. I will say the next time I work with Copics on this channel will hopefully be one larger portrait or some other type illustration rather than sweet. What? Three smaller ones? Because doing the colors for some reason was very difficult. I'm super rusty with these things. I'm also apparently super rusty with voiceovers. If you guys don't know, I got a job recently, so it has been very difficult to film and find time to edit and things like that. So doing a voiceover is very confusing because it's been a hot minute. I hope you guys don't mind. Anyway, here's the final result of the doll. And here is the final results of all three illustrations. I think they look pretty neat despite some of the struggles that came with them. I can't say that they helped me conquer those fears in any capacity, but I did still enjoy working on them regardless. Of course, as always, I want to give a big shout out to my patrons Elise Thompson, Duran, Mandy, Schleeps, Created by Twins, and Kruhi. You guys are the best. If you want to get a shout out alongside these awesome people, as well as some great rewards like digital downloads, early access to stickers and prints, wallpapers, and more, be sure to check out the Patreon. It'll be linked down in the description alongside all my other social media. I love you guys so much, and I'll see y'all in the next one. Bye!